Welcome everybody to the regular meeting of the Zoning and Housing Board of Appeals for May 24th, 2023. Clerk, please call the roll.
Chair Tomato?
Here.
Vice Chair Montesi?
Here.
Commissioner Allen? Commissioner Klaus? Yes. Commissioner Luda? Commissioner Bennett?
Here.
Commissioner Kendall?
Here.
Councilmember?
We have a quorum this evening. Has everyone had an opportunity to review the minutes from the last meeting we held? Yep. Any additions, deletions? Yeah. No. Just get a motion to approve the minutes, please.
So moved.
Okay.
Second.
Clerk, please call the roll.
Chair Tomato?
Aye.
Vice Chair Montesi?
Aye.
Commissioner Luda?
Aye.
Commissioner Zimnowitz?
Aye.
Commissioner Kendall?
Aye.
All right, so we have some correspondence from the, one piece of correspondence, correct? From the Planning Commission. Has everybody had an opportunity to review that?
I know. On each page and it's on the back of,
Right before the second.
on the back of this, right? Turn page.
Stephen Early, while we have you here, could you just basically inform the ZBA about this new form-based code and how this one's our first one that we're doing, and why we have a letter here from the Planning Commission today?
So the planning commission and the zoning board both stated that they do not communicate when it comes to zoning variances. The former chairman said that, multiple members of both boards brought that up. So when we updated our code, we integrated basically a correspondence requirement between the two boards for when these zoning variances come up. So this was done at the request of both boards, by both former board chairpersons. The idea is that the planning commission is supposed to review a zoning variance application and provide an opinion as to what they think the potential impact to the zoning, the conference of planning documents, the city's overall planning documents, how those might be impacted by the granting or not granting of a zoning variance. It's not that uncommon, other communities do it, so we just added it to our code as well. The planning commission is not reviewing zoning variances based on the state's criteria for zoning variances. They are literally just saying, our comprehensive plan says this is how this variance plays into that comprehensive planning document. Our zoning code says this is what might happen if you do or do not grant a zoning variance. It's just correspondence, it's a way to make sure that the two boards are communicating with each other. Ideally, if the zoning board grants a variance, they should also send a correspondence back to the planning commission stating, we granted this variance and this is why we did it. The planning commission is charged with updating our zoning codes. The planning commission is charged with drafting or reviewing any changes to our zoning code. So if the zoning board of appeals finds that they're getting a ton of requests for zoning variances related to like short-term rental, that correspondence should be sent to the planning commission, where they then draft new legislation, which is exactly what happened last time. So in the perfect world, if the zoning board finds that they're getting 40 zoning variance applications a year because our setbacks are too small or too large, or they should be sending a correspondence saying, look, we're getting a lot of requests for zoning variances related to setbacks. You guys should look at that and maybe address it. So it's a two-way street. Both boards are supposed to participate. This just happens to be our first
Form.
foray into it.
Okay, thank you, Steve.
So, may I ask a question? Would it be inappropriate for us to get the correspondence of everybody that we have before the meeting? I mean, that way this isn't treated any
Well, that-
differently.
I think that's a great point, and I think that I was under the impression that that was going to happen, that we would receive this with all the information after the last planning commission meeting, so we have to fix that process.
Okay.
At this point, I kind of, it's here,
We're gonna work with it today, but
We're gonna work with it
I'm
today,
just suggesting
you know.
for future.
yeah,
It would be beneficial because this is pretty involved
yeah.
and has some good points in it and some others, but.
Yes, and we can't ask any questions about it either, and that's why it's kind of hard right now to not be able to ask any questions about how they came to the determinations that are here, and what evidence was produced, and how it came about, and all of that. So I'm taking it as it is, how it's written. There's no one here, I don't think, to represent what was written here. So it does make it kind of difficult. I will relay those points to the planning commission, and so that way, I'll work with that with Carrie, and then we'll get those points made to that. But the way that I see this is, I see this as another member of the community, making a point, and whatever that point is.
Which, that's exactly what it is. It's the planning commission's opinion, it's their statement as a planning commission. It's not when you review for area variances, there's no requirement that you review what the planning commission says. The state says the criteria for an area variance are this. You are reviewing for an area variance. You're not reviewing the planning commission's opinion about an area variance.
Just as an opinion, would it be safe to say that that process is almost like not needed if it's not gonna be valued? I don't know.
Well, I attended.
That's just my opinion.
I attended the first time this was discussed, 2 months ago, and, I shared that opinion.
Okay.
I was hoping not to have to adjudicate or, review this application twice, and I was concerned that we were kind of doing it twice, because if the planning commission was doing it, but as Steve said, they're kind of doing it in a different way. It's not the same criteria that they're looking at. To some people, it does look like an extra layer of bureaucracy, I think, in some cases, so.
This was done literally at the request by the zoning and planning boards.
This
That-
process?
yes.
We simply said we want this
Yes.
process.
Exactly.
I don't recall that. I don't know if it was 10 years ago or.
But they did look
Wasn't
at,
10.
when I read this, they do look at different things than the requirements that we're supposed to look at.
Yes.
And
And
so
that
that
was-
is additional information.
That was what my particular questions were, because I didn't want to redo it again, and then it's sort of like, what we have here today. All right, is everybody ready to move on, or any other questions about that, Doug? Anything, Pete? You're okay with that? Okay. We'll move on to new business. Who's here representing DC Marketing?
I am. My name's Len Carson. My wife, Delene Carson, is also co-owner of DC Marketing. We started right here in the city 11 years ago, 12 years ago. Just a small business, and we have 3 boys, and Dan Wood is one of our sons, and he now works with us, so it's kind of cool that we have a family business here. So we're here tonight before you seeking, I guess, an area variance. And I don't know if you want me to give a background more than who we are, or you just wanted to fire away with some questions, and what you guys were actually looking for.
Well, you can tell us what you're here for. I mean, that would be good. So, and then from there, we'll.
So, I guess I'll look at my timeline here that I wrote down. For me, we did the update to the signs at 189 Main, September 14th and 15th. I I believe it was late November. Steve and I talked in his office, and on November 18th, I submitted a business sign application. I have that here. I don't know if that's part of your packet, but I did fill out all the requirements for a business sign application, and that was turned in November 18th. And the next set of correspondence was December. We received a letter that was dated December 23rd, but we received it December 27th, a certified letter from the code officer. And I don't know, again, if that's part of your packet, but in essence, it was determining that the sign was not in compliance. And it gave some photocopies of the MU1 zone along with a zoning board of appeals application. And then the next correspondence would be February 3rd of this year. We received a certified letter dated February 2nd, and we received it on February 3rd, requesting that the paperwork be turned in for the Zoning Board of Appeals. That paper was turned in March 2nd. I submitted that to codes. I have that here also. Again, I don't know if you have copies of that, but I did bring mine. And that is the last of communication with applications. And then I was sent a letter to attend the Zoning Board of Appeals meeting on April 26th, but I was notified just a few days beforehand. I did send a letter. I actually hand-delivered it to the city clerk. She stamped it. It's here, acknowledging receipt of this, but also letting me know that I had other engagements that I was already locked into and couldn't get out of. So,
Mr. Carson, did you ever attend any planning commission meetings where they discussed the sign that we received, this letter, not your sign?
I did not attend, and I wasn't requested to attend.
Okay. So in other words, this letter and this opinion was entirely formulated without you being there?
Correct.
Okay. And you weren't able to present in front of them, or you didn't present in front of them?
Correct.
Okay.
As you guys are probably well aware, the MU1 zone is now section 300 of our code, and it's 159 pages. And so on page 6,
What was it, 6?
on page 6 of that, the municipal staff and officials, the City of Oneonta code enforcement officer shall have the following responsibilities and powers. A, review applications for building and demolition permits. B, refer applicants to the Planning Commission for site plan review, use determination, and special use permits. And then it goes on down through, and then it lists what the Planning Commission's responsibilities are, and also the Zoning Board of Appeals. So, after filling out the ZBA application and submitting it, I went back and I really honestly started reading the MU1. And so page 6 is pretty easy to find, but on page 86 of the 159 pages is subsection F, where it says video, LCD, LED, or other digitally created or produced signs is under the prohibited signs. So you've got to make it through to page 86 to find it. To be honest with you, I had to go looking for that. I two parts on this. If you guys don't know, maybe Pete, you don't know this, I know that Doug and Larry know this, I'm also on the council. So, there might have been suggestions that I should have memorized the 159 pages of code prior to ever doing any updating. But that's just not the case, I didn't have it memorized. And I did not have a conversation with the code enforcement officer prior to the update, nor the city attorney.
Can you say that one more time, please?
I did not have a meeting or a conversation with Stephen Yearly, our code enforcement officer, or our city attorney, David Mersey, before I did the updates on September 14th and 15th.
You did not, you did.
I did not.
Okay.
I guess I can present to you also, these are your copies. These are letters of support. Different community leaders have reached out and wanted to give their support. And if you don't mind, unless you don't want to, I can read.
It's your moment.
So, former Mayor Gary Herzig submitted a letter of support. Dan Butterman, who lives at 14 Ford Avenue, who's run for assembly a couple times, on the school board, big-time community member, and the Otsego County Sheriff's Department also reached out. And what I find telling is that from Gary Herzig, you'll hear within the letter, he wasn't a fan, always a fan of digital signs. And so he said, "Dear Chairman Tomano, before you tonight are applicants, Len and Deline Carson, owner of DC Marketing, started the business right here in the city. Since their humble beginnings, Len and Deline have been extremely charitable with our local not-for-profit organizations. With more than 60 to date, not one of these organizations who have requested free advertising on DC Marketing's outdoor digital network have been denied. I have not always been a fan of outdoor digital signs, but technology has changed dramatically in the last 10 years. By updating the LED signs at 189 Main, Len and Deline have improved the landscape of our downtown. The signs are not bright and glaring, yet the images are clear and readable. The imagery is seamless and without pixelization, which makes the signs pleasing for those who look upon it. I am sure most of our residents are used to looking up at these signs, since they have been up there for many decades. We view them more as visual community boards, where the time and temperature display every 10 seconds or so, where local events, dinners, and community folks are recognized for all to see who pass by and look up. I believe we can all recognize and accept the signs of 189 Main were LED for at least 10 years prior to the NU1 form-based code, which is complicated and quite lengthy. Became local law. Updating existing signs is allowed, and it is my opinion that Len and Deline have stayed within the definition of our local law. Unfortunately, I was not able to attend tonight's meeting due to previously scheduled event, but please accept this letter of support for the applicants, Len and Deline Carson, DC Marketing. Dan Butterman went on to say, "Dear Chairman Tomano, please allow this letter to serve as support for the application brought by Len and Deline Carson regarding their sign at 189 Main Street. I live at 14 Ford Avenue, not far from this sign location, and I pass by it nearly every day. I see the sign as a valuable community asset, and I appreciate the Carson's initiative to place it there as an upgrade to the previous sign, also an LED sign. I've routinely seen announcements and advertisements for community events and organizations on the new sign. I see it not as a business sign, but as a community board. It provides useful information about community events, plus remembrances that are important to share. For example, there has been a display memorializing the loss of one of our own, Chief Warrant Officer Christopher Aramo, who was killed while piloting a U.S. helicopter in Alaska. Chris is a graduate of Oneonta High School and his family still lives here. I am thankful for his service, plus proud to know that he came from Oneonta. So it gives me a sense of pride for my community to see a remembrance for him displayed on sign. As I understand it, the first sign installed complied with the zoning requirements, and the requirements changed just before the upgrade. It is my opinion that the upgrade is liable and appropriate. Furthermore, the Oneonta City Schools recently installed a similar sign at the entrance of the high school and middle school. Similarly, the school sign displays announcements for school events and highlights the achievements of our students. I value the application of technology in a way that enriches our community, which I think these signs do by sharing information that is useful for our community engagement. I fully support the placement of the LED sign at 189 Main Street and encourage the board to do the same. I think it adds value to our community and respects the boundaries of the zoning requirements. Unfortunately, I am unable to attend tonight's meeting due to previously scheduled events. I think it's telling having two community leaders reach out and want to go and have a letter of support for this sign that's in downtown Oneonta for all of us to look at. I'm not sure what else, if you guys want to answer me some questions.
Well, I just want to let the records, note that the Festival of Lights, Miss Mandingo wrote a letter of recommendation, Hill City Celebration, Stan Fox, Foothills, Mr. Doyle did, as well as the Otsego County Office, the sheriff, so that'll be in the record. Steve, understanding the way the form-based code works, is it a requirement that the applicant be at the planning commission's meeting?
Planning commission meeting has nothing to do with the specific application.
Okay,
So as I stated at the planning commission meeting, they were not discussing Lynn Carson's zoning application.
okay,
So there was no discussion, or should not have been discussion, about Lynn Carson's specific application. There's no testimony taken by the applicant because they're
Okay.
not talking about what is reviewed for a zoning variance.
okay,
They're discussing the impact of digital signage on our comprehensive plan and zoning document, which clearly prohibit digital signage.
under that, the form.
Under the code that was adopted in January of 2022.
Okay. Does anybody, or do you have anything else to add? Yeah, go.
So if 189 Main Street digital signs were not specific to the planning commission, is the letter that you received tonight specific to 189 Main digital signs or digital signs in general? Because I haven't seen this letter of correspondence from the planning commission.
Well, it is specific.
So I find that interesting that the planning commission talked about not only once but twice, 2 monthly meetings about Len and Delene Carson's 189 Main. All we did was we upgraded the sign. I find that interesting that specifically that sign was talked about, not digital signs in general.
Well, digital signs in general are spoken about, but your sign is particular because that was the issue that was brought forward.
And Lori, you know me, I'm black and white. I've watched some of those 2 meetings, and I know specifically that they talked about us. In fact, this isn't the platform, but I will be going to the planning commission and talking about how I was misspoke and misinformation about me at the planning commission meeting. There's specific things that were said at that meeting by individuals that attended that meeting that are not true. And you know me well enough that my reputation means more to me than any of this.
Thank you, Len.
That young man and my other 2 sons mean more to me than this.
Thank you. Thank you. Does anybody have any questions for the applicant? Pete?
Can you just describe the nature of the upgrades? I'm familiar with the sign that's on the property, but I'm not, like, in my mind, thinking of the new sign, or am I thinking of the old sign? Both were digital signs. Was there an increase in size at all? Was there an increase in brightness? Can you describe that?
Great question. So this is where I get a little geeky and I lose people every now and then, so if I lost you, please let me know. So a light emitting diodes is LED. And so what you looked at before was light emitting diodes throughout the sign. One was backlit, whereas that meant the the laminate that was in front of it could be removed whenever. It could be a daily removal, weekly, monthly, however the building owner chose at the time. So that was backlit LED technology. So that really gets down to change copy, which those words, now that I researched, the sign is actually in there. There is change copy in there. So that really gets down to the Supreme Court ruling, where municipalities don't have the right or the ability to interfere with content or change copy. So it was updated. The physical structure is still the same. The supports are the same. The electricity that was used, we actually don't use, there was 2 wires that came out, only 1 wire is being used. So it was actually using less electricity than what it was using before. But now it's still all one LED, and it's actually smaller in size. It's the same width, but the height is actually physically smaller.
The size of the electric screen is larger.
Yeah.
Right.
So this is, I guess, where the difference lies, is that LED, light emitting diodes. So backlit LED is LED. LED as the change copy in the front is still the same. So it comes down to what you remember as saying just 189 main. That could actually, that's change copy. That could be changed on a regular basis. So it was LED because the lighting system behind it was LED also. It's just that one could change a computer by a computer, the other one could not.
Mr. Kendall, you have any questions for the applicant right now? Lori?
So, Lynn, if I understand your timeline, okay, had you met with code enforcement or made a permit for the sign, applied for a sign permit?
I
You
do
would
not.
have probably, because you said your sign permit, I believe you said November 18th is when you did it, but you did the update on September 14th.
That's
So
correct.
2 months later, you're making the sign application.
Because
Sign permit application.
because I was requested to. And I'll be honest with this is based on our previous history. So in 2019, I came before the ZBA members at that time for a application for the vinyl billboard that's across the street, 7678 Main Street. It's across from the public safety building.
I remember that.
Zoning was digital there. But it was fought against. And that went on for quite some time. One of the support letters is actually one of those individuals that didn't want to have a digital sign up there. So we came before ZBA, and it was decided then that we could stay with vinyl, and vinyl included the Tri-Vision. So then, I think it was a year later, I came to Steve and I said, do I need to get a building permit? And he said, no, you're just upgrading. So in all honesty, that's where my brain cells were at, that we're just upgrading. So the sign at 7678 Main Street was there, so I updated it to a Tri-Vision. My brain, I'm looking at 189 Main Street. The LED technology is there, we're just updating. I did not change the physical size of the structure. I didn't change the supports. Those are I-beams that come out of the building and hold things up, and I didn't change the wiring. I didn't add wiring. In fact, we stopped using one circuit.
But I am correct that the size of the sign itself, even though what's in it may be smaller, is larger, right?
No.
At least when I went by, it looks larger to me.
No, so what you would remember is always 189 Main, and then the change copy that's able to happen through a computer. We're actually smaller in height by 8 inches, all the way for the width. The width is the same, but the height is smaller.
So the other question I have is, you are advertising businesses, other businesses, not just what's in 189 Main or not-for-profits now on that sign, is that correct?
Correct.
And that was not true before. And my understanding is in code that's not allowed, it was in MU 1 district.
The previous
I'm just trying to get my
managers of
arms
the
around
sign
this.
were advertising other businesses that were not located at 189 Main.
You had been, because I know you did not-for-profits, but I don't remember, you know.
We managed that sign, it's gotta be 4 or 5 years ago. Yeah, maybe even longer. And, we managed it, but I think it was only for a couple of months and just, it was other businesses that were on there. The chamber was the main manager of that sign and they
Right.
continued. So those businesses, those events that you saw were not specific to 189 Main.
Or the businesses were.
Correct.
Steve, do you know when that sign, the most recent updating of that sign was done? Was it 2013?
It was prior to me being employed at the city.
Okay. So that was before, what day?
2016.
Okay.
For the original sign, your answer?
Well, I believe the
Because it's
original sign in my mind's been there since I was a little kid before, so. So, I mean,
Yeah, but
I'm
look
one,
at, you consider yourself a little
I'm
kid,
still a
right?
little kid, but I was saying the complete digital, the upgrade of the digital
Mhm.
was done, I think, in 2013, I believe, when that was done.
It's been a change copy since it's existed.
That's what I was just trying to make, the point that it's consistent.
The original building owner has given a historical perspective of it. The sign itself has been there 50+ years, and it's always been a change copy. So it's just different forms of change copies where we're at. I mean, back to your question, Pete, if you really want to know, those are 4mm, so that's the spacing between the diodes, and so that's a really tight pixel. I don't know if that helps.
And I guess my follow-up to what you were saying, that what's the purpose for the upgrade? Is it to be able to change the sign more readily, or was there a failure in the old sign?
The technology is going, so you can't necessarily get all the parts and pieces anymore. We have some other signs that are doing the same thing. You're kind of forced to upgrade them, to update them, yeah.
Laura, do you have any other questions? Right now? You can come back.
I'm okay right now, I think.
Louise, do you have any questions?
Nope, pretty comfortable.
I have to say that I remember that sign since I was a little kid, and, you know, I always remember it changing, the sign. And the technology has obviously changed in the 40 years since I've come to this community as a young boy. A lot of things change, you know. I see that somewhat as more of a community bulletin board, and I see it as somewhat of an asset, and I have seen it for that a long time. I remember seeing what the temperature was up there and what time it was when we were walking down Main Street in the 80s. You have any more questions, Pete?
I don't have any more questions, but I just think even though it is considered a community board and it has a lot of community events on it, it's a different type of board than what would be, hosted in the park or, in Muller Plaza or something by the city. So, I'm taking that into consideration as well.
What do you mean by that?
So it's not, it's private, it's private advertising, even though.
So it's profit generation as
Yes,
well?
not even though not all of it is, for profit. And there's, the letters that discuss, community events and things have had, free of charge. And so I see your.
Well, what the great thing in my mind, not to interrupt you, but is when you have a for-profit center, it allows non-for-profits to be on there as well and community things to be there too, because it wouldn't be there unless there was a for-profit center.
But that would be different than if, other towns have, signs outside City Hall, outside the fire department. Those are more community-based signs that aren't profit generating at all.
Yeah.
Like the high school
Yes.
sign isn't profit generating.
Sure.
Well, one of the concerns I have, Jim, is that, we have a code that says there's not gonna be any LED signs.
Sure.
I like LED signs. I think they're cleaner and brighter and sharper, they can be changed quickly. In 2019, when Len applied, I spoke as a community member, not because I knew him, But when I was listening to the discussion, I thought, oh my goodness. So, as a zoning board, I think one of the things we have to really look at is, can we continue to, because we currently have in other cases, not complied with the zoning as it's listed. But I think we need to go back to the planning commission and say, is this the right thing for Oneonta
I
to
think
not
that-
have digital,
So,
not
so
have digital?
that's a bigger question that
It's,
we
it's
can
a
have.
bigger question, a different
Yeah.
question, and maybe this is not when we should be airing it, but I mean.
I said it because I really believe that this sign's always been there. So I don't believe that, it's taken in the same respect in this situation.
Yeah.
That's the way I see it.
I just wanna clarify real quick, so, when the zoning code was passed, this sign became non-conforming. The point of a zoning code is to remove non-conforming things.
Sure.
So what's triggered this zoning request is that this non-conforming thing is being extended in life, which is fine, that's totally fine. That's why he needs an area variance. An area variance is not a use variance. An area variance is a flexible type of variance where you make the determination whether this sign, and one of your weighted things could be, this sign has been present, this is a sign type that there are other examples of in the downtown. I mean, the reason this is here is because the code office can't issue a sign permit because our code says when you alter a sign, it has to conform with the new code. The new code says you cannot approve sign permits that are digital. So when weighting your variance request, when you go through that process, you could say what makes this sign unique or different than other signs is that it was previously digital. That's why this is here. This isn't a battle between whether we should or shouldn't have digital signs. This isn't a battle about, we're not determining whether the sign code as it's written makes sense in every specific situation. This is here because the sign was installed. The code office cannot issue a permit because this sign is not specifically compliant with every part of the new code. So that's part of what you're weighing when you look at an area variance. Area variances are not, they're not weighted the same way as a use variance. You're not having to meet all of the standards. You guys have the ability to kind of weigh at a local level whether those local situational, whether that kind of measure and that weight, how it is weighed out, is what kind of drives an area variance. Whereas the state has if you do not meet the criteria of a use variance, you cannot issue a use variance. You guys just have to rationally weigh what is the impact of the area variance requested, how does it impact the overall zone, and whether it's detrimental to the existing environment of downtown, which one of your positions could be, this has always been a digital sign, so maybe that's okay. So just, when we go through this, like, this isn't a he said, she said, this is what we should do, this is what we shouldn't do. This is just a review of an application that the code office cannot technically issue a sign permit for. So that's why this is here.
Thanks for that summary. Thank you.
In your position about the sign and the digital stuff, that's exactly what you should do.
Right.
The zoning board should say, we looked at this and we're not entirely sure, because when we did that particular code update, the planning commission was not 100% no digital sign. It was actually back and forth, and they kind of punted it to the council, who then said, whatever. So you should send that back. That should be a topic.
Thank you.
So, if you didn't get this variance, how would you rectify this? What are the other alternatives for you so that we understand, I think you'll have a sign there, one way or another. But
Right.
so what would it be? I mean, I understand that asking you to take down what you could put up is probably a lot of expense and whatever, but
Sure.
let's just say, what would happen? What would you have there
So I
to
think,
remediate this?
before I answer that, so the points that Steve brought up are good points to understand that in this particular case, this digital update is just that, it was always a digital sign in some form or another, and it was an upgrade. And so, answering the questions is whether or not this specific sign has the ability, the benefits to the local community. And that's, I think, in essence, what he was trying to say is that, does it have benefits to the local? To the chairman's point, PD's right, without having private, the public or the not-for-profits wouldn't get that benefit. I mean, we're not making money. It'll take me many, many years to actually recoup back what we have invested in this location.
Well, that's part of your
If you didn't-
investment. That's
Right,
your
so
investment.
we're looking at this
That's
long
your
term.
business, and we're not gonna,
So,
you know,
but
but
you
what
asked me
might
what would I
be the
do now.
remedy if this variance weren't provided?
Right.
What might be the remedy for you? Because that's one of the questions we're asked for this kind of a variance. And I don't know what the remedy might be.
Right. So what would be the remedy?
Yeah, is there a different kind of sign you would put there then, or,
Well,
one that's not
You-
quite
you
so
can't-
upgraded? I don't know.
You can't upgrade. I mean, if you look at the sign code, the MU1, no cabinet lights, or no cabinet signs are in there. So every one of those cabinet signs that you see up and down Main Street, if you can't upgrade them, you can't put them back.
So you're saying there's no remedy for you?
There is no remedy, because it now states, there's one sentence, and it's not even a complete sentence, it's one line within this new code out of 159 pages that says no LED, no LCD. I don't know what the remedy, to your point, would be. It's been a change copy for its whole life, in one form or another. I actually
Just
don't know how to
my
answer the
experience.
question.
My experience is sort of from background because technology is upgrading itself and parts are not available. So I don't know what your cost would be. The upgrade, you mentioned that, you know, obviously, that there's no parts available probably.
Correct.
Right.
You cannot buy those.
So you would say that probably just get rid of
But I
the
didn't
sign.
change the physical
No, you didn't,
cabinet, I
right, I'm
didn't
not saying
change
you did.
that.
No, I understand. That is,
Thank you very much. Is there anybody in the audience that would like to speak to this sign? No? Okay.
And then I guess, am I the only one that doesn't remember that there were, because as I read the code, we're not supposed to be advertising for other businesses.
That's
On
why,
signs.
that's one of the area variance things you'd have to request.
So that's why I asked.
Yeah, and I
Because
mean,
that's
I
some-
don't remember that, but
At some point, whenever this was updated, they've been doing it all along. So that's why we're not like creating what wasn't already there.
right,
in
no,
that
I'm
respect
just
as
saying,
far
do
as-
you recall, because I recall all of the not-for-profit things, I just
Sure.
don't recall the business things.
Sure. I mean, Len, how many percentage of, time on this sign are you gonna allocate to not-for-profits? I mean, do you know if there's a percentage that you would do that, or is it just whenever it comes up? I mean, I think that is important to people. We know that you own the sign, now, and you control the sign. And I think, from a community standpoint, it's important in that respect that this always be used for, non-for-profits and things like that. And I don't know, obviously I don't understand, I don't know what the actual, how many times an hour you can change that sign, what you can do. But most recently I was, at a meeting and the mayor was talking about, creating digital signage in downtown to let people know where there was parking. And so I said, well, this would be a great thing to throw up on that sign to let people know that there's parking in the Deed Street lot and stuff like that. So I
think they'd have to pay with a plate of cookies.
but I'm just saying,
What's that, Laura?
They have to pay with a plate of cookies or something.
Yes, exactly.
so I would
I work
just,
for cookies, to be honest with you.
so I just was wondering, if there was a percentage or something that you might be
I mean,
comfortable
if you're
with
looking
doing.
for me to quantify that, I
I'm
probably could, but.
I'm not necessarily asking you to quantify, I'm
I'm not-
asking you to be comfortable with this being a
Right.
sign that can be used into the future for the people of Oneonta, as well as a for-profit business. I'm just looking for that, you understand what I'm asking for?
Sure, and I can answer you. So if you go and look at the sign today, it doesn't look any different than back in September, October when we put it up.
Sure.
Meaning, it was important for me to recognize the historical aspect. The time and temperature was always flashed up there. So I wanted to make sure that the time and the temperature was still up there, because so many people comment on that thing. That they come down, it's sort of like in our house, we took a big clock that we had up there forever, and we took it down over painting, and we thought we'd leave that down. Well, as we walk down the hallway, I'm always looking up there, I'm always looking up for what the time of the day is. And when I stand there, I watch people, and that's what they do, they look up, and they look at the time. So that's flashing every 10 seconds. Every 10 seconds, the time, the temperature, and this says 189 Main on it is flashing. So divide that out of 60, and then for the not-for-profits, every time they've asked, I put them on somewhere in our digital network. And now that the update is there and it's so much clearer and crisp, that's being the location that we're being asked. I mean, Catholic Charities just asked me the other day, hey, it's Wednesday or it's Tuesday and we're having dinner on Thursday, do you mind putting up the dinner, the spaghetti dinner for Thursday for Catholic Charities? So, you know, Jen sent me this very white background, black letters saying her spaghetti dinner, and I'm like, that's not what's gonna get anybody's attention. Showing spaghetti is actually gonna get somebody's attention, and then saying, hey, this is where it is. So I created a new ad for it. So, I mean, back to your original question, quantifying it, I'd say we do at least 50% now, at least that. We've done that for all of our open space. If it's open, we put something in there. Because we're actually graded on ours. That's how people grade our businesses, by the art.
So you're comfortable with saying that you would use it into the future for those type of things?
Correct. Our business has always been that way. We're not changing our business model.
Well, this variance
This
goes
is-
forever.
The reason why Dan is here is because he's our succession in our business.
I get that, and this variance goes forever, so I'm not, you know, whether you own the business or somebody else, I just wanna make sure that, you know, it's still used for public good.
They're not sitting with me, but they are part of the
Sure,
family.
sure.
They just don't wanna be in the center of the room. I don't wanna be in the center of the room either.
We have a little bit of housekeeping we have to do, we have to, you know, comply with the seeker that we need to do. Closing the public comment at this time. I think you filled out, the applicant filled out the short, part one of the environmental assessment form. We have to do number 2.
Need to declare the action.
So that's right, it's an unlisted action, under seeker, and a CEF has been filed. We're gonna go ahead and do part 2 now. So I guess the clerk will read the short form here.
Question number 1, will the proposed action create a material conflict with an adopted land use plan or zoning regulations?
I mean,
It does, yes,
Yes.
yes.
So you have an option between no or small impact may occur, or moderate to large impact may occur.
small.
Small.
Number 2, will the proposed action result in a change in the use or intensity of use of land?
No.
Will the proposed action impair the character or quality of the existing community?
No.
Will the proposed action have an impact on the environmental characteristics that cause the establishment of a critical environmental area or a CEA?
No.
Will the proposed action result in an adverse change in the existing level of traffic or affect existing infrastructure for mass transit, biking, or walkway?
No.
Will the proposed action cause an increase in the use of energy and it fails to incorporate reasonably available energy conservation or renewable energy opportunities? Will the proposed action impact existing public or private water supplies?
No.
Will the proposed action impact existing public-private wastewater treatment utilities?
No.
Will the proposed action impair the character or quality of important historic, archaeological, architectural, or aesthetic resources?
No.
Will the proposed action result in an adverse change to natural resources?
No.
Will the proposed action result in an increase in the potential for erosion, flooding, or drainage problems?
No.
Will the proposed action create a hazard to environmental resources or human health?
right, you know, I concur with the code officer, you know, as it's being an unlisted action. We've gone through the, second part. I don't believe that there'll be you know, any large impact at all on it. So I don't think we have to do any further review. So that's gonna have a negative impact. Could I get a motion to move it?
Yep, I make a motion to move the.
Doesn't need a further review. There's a negative impact.
As a negative impact, right, as part
I'll
two.
second.
Clerk, please call the roll.
Chair Powell,
Aye.
Vice Chairman Haney. Aye. Commissioner Aruda?
Aye.
Commissioner Zimnowitz?
Aye.
Commissioner Kendall?
Aye. Does anybody else have any other questions for the applicant? Do you have anything else you'd like to say? Motion time, does anybody?
So before you make a motion, go through, if you go to your, maybe it's on the application page for the area variance, there's gonna be a section that asks, I'm using technology here. So you're gonna wanna go through, there should be a section for the area variance that says, can the benefit be achieved by other means feasible, whether the request is substantial.
I think we went through most of that through the questioning.
Yeah, so what you need to do is just, in whatever motion you make, you go through each one of those and say, based on blank, based on, you know, discussion by the board, that the sign is pre-existing, that it has a unique, you just wanna make sure that you cover that in whatever motion or whatever discussion you have. Specifically why it meets those requirements. Here, let me get the application. There should be it's on the application that Lynn filled out. Yeah, thanks. All right, so I just wanna make sure we do this right. Okay, so in the area variance section,
I know the questions you're thinking of, they're just not listed there.
Well,
no,
Is it,
they list the use variance ones, so,
is it the 5 area variance considerations?
yeah, that's it.
Is this what you wanna talk about?
Yeah, pass it right.
Since I haven't gotten that much training with people in front of me.
Okay. Nice.
Stop laughing, Carrie.
So the 5 factors here, effect on neighborhood character, whether there's an alternative solution, how substantial the request is, what the effect of granting the variance may have on the environment, and whether the difficulty and necessity of area variance is self-created.
It's part of this, isn't it? We just did that.
No, that's from
Part
very.
of
No, yeah, so seeker is separate. So the area variance considerations, like, what I would say is, so if we go down the list, number 1, the effect on neighborhood character. As you guys kind of discussed, this is a pre-existing sign, this was an upgrade. Would you all agree that,
Well, thanks for that, Steve. I do appreciate that. I think we answered all those questions. I'm just looking for a motion from
Are
somebody
you
on the.
suggesting that motion has to say?
I would
speak to
suggest that
That's
you
correct.
specifically say in the motion, these 5 things were met during your discussion.
That's
on
fine if somebody wants to make that motion.
Give this back to Lori and she
Okay.
can make that.
I'll give it to the upper. Let's go for it. Just what?
I'm not making the motion.
Right. You,
Somebody else needs to make the motion.
It's just, I would do
just
that.
go through and say this,
Yes,
this,
so
this.
make the
And under
motion.
consideration of those things.
Yep, for the consideration under the area variance considerations for the application, applied for the sign at 189 Main Street, that the 5 factors include, the first one would be that there is no effect on neighborhood character or change on the neighborhood character.
Because they're already on the sign.
Yeah, because the sign was pre-existing and the sign dimensions have not changed. Second is whether there's an alternative solution that would require variance. And at that point, we stated that there,
You don't have to, do it.
no, just say the
Just to say what your
Number
motion is.
3, how substantial the request is. Number 4, what the effect granting the variance may have on the environment. And number 5, whether the difficulty necessitating the area variance is self-created. I make a motion to adopt these 5 points.
You would
To
make,
approve,
Yeah,
to approve,
sorry,
to approve.
to approve the application that has been set forth from Len Carson.
Seconded. Clerk, please call the roll.
Chair Camille,
Aye.
Vice Chair Montesi,
Aye.
Commissioner Rea,
Aye.
Commissioner Zimnowitz, Commissioner Kendall.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So now you know, don't make any upgrades till you talk to Steve.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, any of our signs. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you for your patience. Who's here to represent 5 Chester Street? Hi. What's your name?
Come on up.
Ed Spencer. This is my wife Linda. We've been at Chester for many, many years. The porch that we have right now, the railing is rotten and needs replacing. The reason I'm applying for a variance is it's really, it's too small to come out the door and go around. My mother-in-law is 93, and she's visiting us a lot more since she moved to Long Island. So I think it's unsafe. It is unsafe, there's no question about it. So in replacing the porch, I'd like to make it a bit bigger to accommodate those things. Yeah, a walker and eventually a wheelchair. So. I spoke to all my neighbors before I even had the idea to replace the porch. You know, I mean, I got all their permission before I started drawing up plans and came to the board.
So the materials that you're gonna use are basically the same type that are there now, or?
Yeah, oh yeah. It'll be treated lumber and the Trex and plastic decking.
It doesn't actually go into the street at all, it goes into RER.
Yeah, it's just gonna take a couple more feet of our yard. I don't know if you've been by Chester, but the sidewalk is, like, this is a small retaining wall about 20 inches tall, and our stairs go through that retaining wall. So it's not a detriment to traffic or anything like that, the sidewalk.
So from the pictures, it looks like the deck is gonna go, or the porch is gonna go, if you're looking at the house, all the way to the end of the.
Right, it's gonna cover the
On
whole
one side.
side,
Yep,
yeah, of that. And it's gonna go from 7 to 14 feet,
yep. And then a few feet
2 feet
closer.
out, yeah, to accommodate getting in and out the door.
So it doesn't extend all the way to the right-hand side of the house?
I'm sorry?
It doesn't extend all the way to the right-hand side of the
Oh,
house?
no.
Just a little jet out.
Just to that, yeah. that little-
Yeah, if you look at the small picture, you can see the blue area, it's really small. I keep wanting to do this and make it bigger, but it's really small. But if you see the blue area and you look at the legend here,
Yeah,
it
it's
shows
just
you the proposed.
to this
yeah.
bump out area,
Yes, it's gonna go from the one bump up to the next.
but to the other side down.
Yeah.
Well, I think porches are great, good sense of community, and it creates a better thing, and I appreciate what you're doing. Pete, do you have any additional questions for him?
I didn't see a handrail on this,
Yeah,
Diagram,
that's in the plan.
okay.
Yeah, that's definitely in the plan. I don't know if you can see
There's
the
not
picture of the handrail that comes up the stairs from the street,
Yeah,
sidewalk.
yeah,
It's gonna be like that. I'm gonna do a steel.
yeah, this is the diagram, I didn't see the handrail on. And the steps as you move them, does that go more into the driveways? The driveway is on that side?
Steps are gonna remain basically where they are. I think I'm gonna move them over about 6 inches to the right, looking at the front of the house, is all.
I don't think I have any further questions.
Bill, do you have any questions for the
I
applicant?
know, it's just, I was gonna ask about the location of the steps and whether that was gonna change, but that's been answered. So at some point, you mentioned that at some point you wanna use this to get a wheelchair access to the house. How would, that obviously isn't part of the current plan.
Well, that's not a ramp coming up from the street.
Right.
That would be from the inside of the house out to the porch.
Out to the porch, okay, so not access to the house.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, we have a driveway that goes up to basically the elevation of the back door.
Any other questions?
Any questions?
Yeah. I like the idea of a bigger porch that you can sit out and visit your
We love it.
neighbors with, and
We didn't have kids on the street till about 4 or 5 years ago, and now there's kids playing basketball
that's
and
great.
soccer and baseball, and they're out there all the time right after school, and we love it. We love to go out and sit and listen to them. So,
Thanks. Steve, do you have anything to say about this particular application?
Problem with non-conforming lot sizes
Yep.
or setbacks.
Yeah.
And the remaining, the adjacent properties, I notice all have the, a similar sized porch.
Oh, yeah, they do, actually, yeah.
And there, is yours going to extend beyond the level for the setback? When you increase the 2 feet that goes towards the road, is it gonna extend beyond what's already there in the neighborhood?
No, I don't believe so. There's porches that are as closer than ours, definitely, yes, yeah.
And the one next door.
Yeah,
that way.
one of the-
Yeah, I
Yeah.
looked at the street view and they all, it looked like all the adjacent properties
See,
have
was the
a similar.
issue that we just taken up,
Yeah, I mean, what happened is when a lot of this was zoned, you have a 20-foot setback in neighborhoods where there's 10 feet yard. I mean, so,
Yeah.
moving on, we're-
like, my house has a non-conforming front porch, and I have much more yard than they do, because I don't have 20 feet. I mean, it's just, we're trying to go through and fix those.
I Charlie.
So, this is, this is a type 2 action under seeker, and, there's no additional, review required here. So, I guess we'll make a motion to, say that there's no action required, no negative impact on the environment. I get a second. And it's a type 2 action, declared a type 2.
Second.
Clerk, please call the roll.
Chair Tomato?
Aye.
Vice Chair Montani?
Aye.
Commissioner Arruda?
Aye.
Commissioner Zimnowitz?
Aye.
Commissioner Hamel?
Alright,
Steve, in this, we have to approve the site plan, is that what we have to do in this one too? Or just,
Nope, just approve setback.
just to approve the setback? Okay. Area.
It's an area variance for setback.
Thank you.
Are you ready for
I mean, you
motion?
could even say, go so far to say approving the application is submitted.
Yeah, that's what I was saying.
I would move that we approve the application as submitted for 16, I'm sorry, 5 Chester Street.
second.
Clerk, please call the roll.
Chair Tomato?
Aye.
Vice Chair Montani?
Aye.
Commissioner Arruda?
Aye.
Commissioner Zimnowitz?
Aye.
Commissioner Hamel?
Alright.
So you have the variance then.
Well, thank you very much.
So you just have to see the code office, they'll tell you all the code compliant things you need to do to make that work.
Yep, building permit.
A building permit.
Enjoy your porch.
Building permit.
You need to get a
Well,
building.
yeah, that's why I'm here.
Right, yep.
Well, this gets you, and then you gotta go apply for a building permit.
Right, that's where I'm going.
Can I just make a little suggestion? When you send the card, you should go to the side door when you come here for
We
this
were waiting
at
at the
night.
front.
Oh,
There's no sign.
we'll put a sign maybe.
There's no indication telling you to go to the side door. I just remembered there was a side door here. So,
Very good.
Good point.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
thank you.
This is what digitally.
Oh,
Good night.
Neon lights.
I want to thank the code office for being here as usual. Thank you, Steve, your expert help, thank you very much.
It was.
To adjourn.
I really hope that we do take this forward to the planning board.
Okay,
I mean, we can
That-
forward that
I
to
mean,
them.
We can't, I know that the comprehensive plan wants to keep us historical, but we can't deny.
well, what's really interesting was last night I was up in Saratoga, and somehow they've been able to, have the historical, there's a way to do it, I think, and we can figure that out.
Well, also, I mean, a historic district is not limited to I mean, the era that you are remaining true to is not static either. I mean, you know.
Sure.
So, I mean, as you say, that sign has been there, quote unquote, forever, right? Well,
Yeah.
you know,
Some form of it, yeah.
it's not permanent.